This week I learned I have lost any and all semblance of self-control. Hey, what's up, bookworms? Mike back with another weekly update. It is Comic-Con weekend, so there's been a lot of things going on here towards the end of the month of July. I know I am a little late, but I do think it is partially because of the Comic-Con reason. I know there was going to be some things I wanted to talk about, and I didn't want to wait until the next weekly update to talk about them. But also because guys, we had like a just very unexpected House of the Dragon stuff that I wanted to talk about. And here's the deal with that. A lot of feedback on why so much House of Dragon stuff. Well, look, guys, the Song of Ice and Fire is one of my favorite fantasy worlds. It's in the conversation, flipping a coin for my favorite fantasy world. So when we get new content for it, I'm going to want to talk about it a lot. So that's why that kind of just kind of came up, I think 3 videos in a row. So that I also had scheduled already a talk about nothing. So my schedule combined with the Comic-Con thing just said, okay, I got to move the weekly update a little later this week. But we'll be back to Friday next week. But better late than never, right? So I don't feel bad when we have, new videos every day. I try not to do 5 videos in 48 hours, so I wanted to make sure I spaced them out a little bit. So here we are, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about the weekly update with what am I reading, guys. I've got some kind of weird news. It's just not clicking for me. Codex Alera, I said I was going to give it 3 books. And here's the thing. I'm not quitting it. I am not quitting reading Codex Alera. I just don't think I'm going to follow that schedule that I originally, the 2 per month thing, because we're here in the first month and I can't even finish the first 2. About this far, it's not clicking for me in a way that just like absolutely zero feels unique about it. And I don't feel like there's any of those things that will make me overlook that. I don't feel like it's anything that I am looking for in fantasy that I either haven't already done or just I'm not at that part of my life anymore. It's not bad. It's just there's nothing making me want to keep going. There's no storylines. I'm like, I got to know an answer to this. There's no characters like I've got to follow that character. And I mean, it's the one thing that I think that Jim does absolutely great. He can't do because it's a period piece fantasy book. I can't have the humor, you can't have the quirks, you can't have the funny one-liners and things like that. And I'm not saying that you have to have like MCU humor for me to enjoy stuff. I'm just saying that's stuff that Jim would always be able to put into his books. If I ever felt like with Dresden Files that it was getting a little dry in places, he'd always make me be like, that's why it is, because I love these characters, I love this world, and I want to know the answer to these things. This, through a book and a half, I'm not getting any of that. And I said I don't want to compare it to Dresden Files, but it's hard. It's hard when you've read 17 Dresden Files books, guys, and you read an author's other series. You're always going to kind of try to compare it to that. So I'm human in that regard. I think that's normal. But what I'd say is right now is I'm not quitting it. I'm going to finish the series. I'm not going to read it at the same pace that I had originally planned to. And for right now, I've just kind of put this one to the side. It's definitely not a DNF. I would tell you. I mean, I just did it with 3 Body Problem. If it's a DNF, I'd tell you. But right now, I'm just not finding the motivation to keep going with this. So if that disappoints people, I do apologize. But like I said, I feel like right now there's so much other stuff that I want to read, and if I can't make myself really get invested in something, why am I wasting my time with it? So I'll probably go back to it, like I said, probably relatively soon. It's just at the moment right now, I'm like, it started to feel like a chore. When it's starting to feel like that, I didn't feel like I had, another 4 books of those in the next 8 weeks, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. So my schedule was just all over the place because, guys, that really did just kind of bust some things. So I thought maybe you're just doing like one of your fantasy burnout things again. So I said, what do you do then? You pick up a Stephen King book. So I decided, hey, get back on the multiverse, which the next book was Rose Madder. And I started, pretty quick. The thing about this book, guys, is I read it for the first time. I think I was 16 years old, and I was still in that mode of I want Stephen King to write scary stuff, and a domestic violence book wasn't what I was kind of looking for. So it was, I want to say, at that age, I just wasn't really able to get into that. I don't want to say like what invested, because he always still writes really good characters and stuff like that. And I do remember finishing, but I didn't remember a ton about it, except it was a woman who had been abused and she was on the run from her abusive partner, and that very much is true. But what I don't recall about this book is just how graphic this book is. It's one of those things that I think if you are someone who has kind of went through, maybe some domestic abuse in your life or an abusive partner, I think that it's going to be a very, very tough read because this is Stephen King we're talking about. He's not going to shy away from those things. He's not going to fade to black. He's not going to turn the camera away. He's going to tell you exactly what's going on. And yeah, it's one of those things that the prologue of this is one of the most eye-opening prologues I've ever read by Mr. King. And so I would just definitely say at this point in my life, it's definitely a different read than it was as a teenager. And I've said that's one of the great things about rereading King. If you read him years ago and you read him again in your adult life, that his books are going to have just like a whole new meaning for you. And that's what makes The Man of Dark Wizard. So I'll probably keep continuing on that this week. But something really crazy happened, guys, because look, I'm just a mess right now. This happens about twice a year. I'll just be a mess. I'll start something. I'm just not clicking. And then I'll just be like, well, what am I going to do? And I'll just pick up something random and start reading it out of nowhere or rereading something. And this time it kind of fell in the latter. This was not planned, you guys. I mean, we did talk about A Song of Ice and Fire so much on the channel this weekend. And I just reread Fire and Blood. I think that's kind of what brought it on. I got this awesome Folio Society edition of the first book in Song of Ice and Fire, which is A Game of Thrones. And I wanted to kind of look at it because it has a whole, me and my wife were talking about, I was looking at the map that I have framed, which is not that big, that detailed, but in this collection it has like this massive, massive fold out a map of Westeros and Essos and stuff that you never really, I mean, just down to like, you can just follow the roads, it's so detailed. So I opened that and I said, hey, I know that it says on the thing there that Joe Abercrombie has an introduction to this book. So I opened it up and I started reading the introduction by Mr. Abercrombie. And what do you know? The next thing I noticed, I was 50 pages into A Game of Thrones. So I guess I have started an impromptu reread of A Game of Thrones. Definitely so because I am on page 121 now. So, look, guys, this is one of my favorite series of all time. I've reread it more times than I can probably recall because I used to reread the first trilogy over and over and over and over again until we got A Feast for Crows. And then I reread it again leading up to the release of Dance with Dragons. But I haven't read it since then, guys. So I haven't reread this series in, God, what, 11 years? Is that how long it's been? And I know a lot of people are like, yeah, but what about you don't have time for rereads and stuff like this is different. This is different. This is like with me, it was like Dune or Lord of the Rings and something that doesn't matter how many times I've read it. I'm always going to reread it. And this is the longest stretch I've done in a while. So I think Fire and Blood, and then talking that we had that podcast about what kind of brought us into this world, got me wanting to just that itch that itch will happen. That Westeros itch will happen to you guys, and you'll get into these things, and you can't stop. So I don't know really how this is going to affect things, but look, I didn't talk about A Song of Ice and Fire on the channel for pretty much the first 3 years I've ran this channel. I mean, I did a Why You Should Read, I did like a State of the Franchise kind of thing. It's just because everything was so negative towards A Song of Ice and Fire after the way that A Game of Thrones, or the show Game of Thrones ended. It was so negative that you couldn't talk about the books without it. I feel like with the new HBO series coming and the fact that we just reread Fire and Blood and talked about it, I feel like there's that post-mortem feels like it's over. Feels like I can now. And much like how I'm doing with Lord of the Rings now, I want to be able to talk about one of my favorite fantasy series of all time. So I think there's going to be a lot of Song of Ice and Fire content coming because it's very clear now to me that I'm going to be doing another reread. I think that's quite easy to say. I have had some smaller factions of viewers on the channel that's asked me to do individual book reviews for A Song of Ice and Fire, and I always said, when George announces the date for when's a winner, I'll go back and reread. Well, I don't think we can depend on that anymore. And you know what? I think it's time for me to quit whining about that. I will always be grateful to George for what we got. Sure, I'm disappointed like everyone else, but here's the thing, guys. He gave us 5 amazing books. And I would like to revisit them. I'd like to revisit them before I talk to you guys about them, because I'm going off of 11 years ago, the last time that I really revisited this world in that way. I don't count the TV show because it's a way different experience than reading it. It was very faithful in the early parts, but it's a way different experience to read it, as I think most people know. So I'm excited to go back, and if anybody wants to go back with me, it's not going to be a schedule or anything. It's going to be, hey, I feel like reading this. I'm going to be more of an impulsive reader. I do still like to plan things out, but I have said once I start getting rid of all these read-alongs, I do want to be more of an impulsive reader, and that's what this is. This is me just saying, hey, I'm going to do this, and then being like, why not? Why not just keep going? Why shouldn't I keep it? But I half blame Folio Society for making such a sexy edition of this book, but I also blame George for writing just such an amazing story that I see it and I start it and I can't stop. So there we go, guys. No regrets at all. I am sorry, people who wanted me to read, Codex Lyra right now, but I gotta follow my heart, and my heart will always lie in Westeros, I think. So, guys, that's really what I got. I also started doing that with Ship of Theseus, which I just don't even know how to talk about, guys. I think that even the read-along that we were kind of doing on the Discord, we had about 6 or 7 people. And I think all of us have just kind of realized now, oh, wow, this is going to take a long time, because you've got your main story, then you got your story in the margins, which you're supposed to read through in 2 different orders because of the time they take place, and you got all your mysteries and stuff. So literally took me about 4 hours to read 15 pages of that book because of all of the stuff you have to do with it. So I think we've all just kind of decided that's just going to be when you got time, read some. It's nothing that's going to be nothing that we're definitely in a rush to get through. So I don't really know how to talk much to you guys about it. If you've seen it, you know. But I'll post a link down below if you want to buy the book and check it out for yourself. So I'll talk about that more when we get further into it, because, yeah, we're all just like, this is just not going to be something we go through very quickly here. And, in the end, where's the rush? Where's the fire? So there we go. How about some what am I going to read? Now, obviously, I'm going to finish Rose Matter, and I'd like to be, keep working on Game of Thrones just when I want to. That's kind of what I'm kind of doing right now. Definitely, that's not a world I have any intent to rush, because there is no book 6 right now. So I don't think that there's any rush on that, and it's not part of a read-along. And that's just a world I love, so I'm just going to kind of take my time with that, read it as I go. And then, guys, after I finish Rose Matter, I'll be dipping into the final book in the Greenbone Saga, which is going to be Jade Legacy, which I'm very, very excited to do. I don't know if I've made it really known yet, but I have spoken with Fonda Lee. We were emailing back and forth the other day, and we are going to have a conversation on the channel in September. So when that gets closer, guys, I will do my usual and post a little note in the community board to where if you want me to ask Miss Lee some questions, I can present those to her. But very exciting. I think that we'll be talking about the books, influences, and we'll probably be talking about the movie The Godfather for most of the video, talking about how much we love that movie. So it's a very exciting time. I'm very excited and anxious to see how that story ends, because the first 2 books have just been great. And I can't wait to see how it ends, especially since just about everyone says Jade Legacy is the best one in that series. So very excited to do that. Very excited to speak with her. And speaking of The Godfather, that's my plans after that. Since I don't have Codex Lyra books planned next month, I do think that The Godfather was the next really big book that I had planned to read after, but I wanted to finish Greenbone first. So this will be my first read of The Godfather. It's a movie I love and have seen more times than I can count, and I can pretty much put on mute and quote nonstop. It drives my wife crazy that I quote this movie to her nonstop, but you know what? Them's the breaks when you get married to a guy who loves The Godfather, So I'll be reading that book for the first time, so I'm excited to do it. But that's really all I got in my plans for what to read. This week on the channel, there was some stuff to talk about. We did a video for favorite Stephen King protagonist, because I was taking a break in Into the Multiverse. I kind of wanted to do a Stephen King video, and I talked about my favorite villains, so I said I'm going to talk about, how about I talk about some of my favorites on the other side, some of his protagonists. Now, these are definitely not what I would call white knights. Stephen King characters are always going to be quite damaged and flawed, but that's what I love about them. So it makes them more realistic, makes them more relatable, and there are 10 in there that I talked about that I love a lot. Kind of did a Durfee a little bit, because I did do 13 of them, because 3 honorable mentions, but there's just so many good ones that count. I mean, there's some great ones I had to leave out, but the feedback's been really good. I felt like my picks were very fair, and I gave my reasons why I like those the most. But yeah, that's a list that probably could have done 19 as well. But I was trying not to make that video a half of an hour. Then was all of the Song of Ice and Fire stuff, or the House of the Dragon stuff. I did a trailer breakdown for House of the Dragon, and because we just reread Fire and Blood, so I thought that was a great way to kind of get people, if they didn't reread Fire and Blood, kind of help them explain what was going on with the characters and who these people are and why I think you should be watching when this show debuts next month. But just so you can tell, I got the feedback I got is people could tell how excited I was in that video, because I am, guys. I live and breathe that world. Years before it was a big pop culture phenomenon, that was my world. That really was. That was everything to me. So really, it's just kind of like opening back up that dusty file cabinet upstairs here of all the stuff that I have knowledge of, and being able to talk about it and just be excited about it. what I think they're going. Seeing some of these things again, this is just the same. If I had this channel back when the first season of Game of Thrones, I'd have done the same thing, where I was just excited to see some of these things that I've imagined in my head, or seeing that amazing art in World of Ice and Fire for so many years, seeing it come to life on screen. This is exciting stuff as a fan of the books, you know. So I'm very excited about the show, and I was very excited to talk about it in that trailer breakdown. And that isn't all of the House of the Dragon so we're going to be doing on the channel. We are going to be bringing back the old podcast I had called Throne Zone. Now, Throne Zone, we were still doing Geek Media Core podcast, me and my old podcast host Danny. And when he got caught up on Game of Thrones, because he just heard me talk about it every week, and so he decided to binge it and caught up. And then we would do just in our episode, we would do like a 10-15 minute segment called Throne Zone, where we just talk about the most recent episode. So I decided, hey, why don't I just bring that back? I got my old podcast host blessing. I invited him to be involved, and he won. No, I'm good. I'm good now. He's moved on from that part of life. But I did invite Madison and of course Scott from the Bald Booktuber on with me. Three of us that love Game of Thrones, that love A Song of Ice and Fire, obviously. And we did an episode just kind of talking about our origins, how we got into this world, and then we did our first one just about what we thought about the final trailer, just kind of what our expectations are, and, you know, our concerns, you know, why this show might not work for everyone kind of thing. So I thought it was a good introduction episode, but the plan is right now, guys, is probably a day or two after the episode airs on HBO, we'll be doing a live episode, after show, basically, talking about that episode, taking questions and things like that, just like I would do with any kind of live stream, where you can ask a question and things like that. So it's exciting. It's exciting. We chose to do that over Rings of Power, obviously, which we'll be talking about here in a minute. But yeah, very exciting times to be able to talk about that world again. And being able to do it with two people I would consider very good friends is always going to be quite a blast. And then I did my war band tag, create your own war band. This was a tag by the Brothers Gwynn, and it was really, really fun. You know, I've not let it be a secret that I'm not crazy about tag videos, but that one was really good, where, you know, you pick up your favorite swordsman, your favorite magician, you know, your leader, your things like that. A lot of fun, and I kind of made it harder on myself by saying I could only pick one character from each book series, and that made it a little tougher to decide which ones to not include. So I think it was a lot of fun. I don't know yet if the other people that I tagged have done their tag yet, or we'll see. But I want to thank Edward and Will Gwynn for inviting me to do that, and that's why. It was really, really good timing, because I invited them on to talk about nothing a couple months ago. We just got to have that episode yesterday, our Talk About Nothing. Great kids, man. I love those two gentlemen. I think they're so sharp and knowledgeable. John has done an amazing job raising two fine young men there. I think that those guys really are what I hope my kids can become. You know, not only just that close, but, you know, actually like readers. That would be nice. Right now, my kids are like kryptonite when they see a book. But, you know, hey, they might get a little older and really dive in. But fun conversation, and we could have talked for hours more. You know, but my kids, of course, you know, they had gone 2 hours without eating, and they were banging on the door, you know, because they would shrivel up and die, you know, if they don't eat every 2 hours. It's kind of how it works with them. But great time talking with those two gentlemen. Would definitely do so again. I look forward to speaking with those gentlemen again in the future. So how about some next week's plans, guys? Now, look, while I was doing all that this week, I was also fighting a head cold. It was really, really rough. I was afraid I was going to lose my voice. I'm glad I didn't. It is a little deeper. I have been coughing and have had to blow my nose about every 12 seconds, you know. But I didn't really have a lot of time to plan what happens next week. Now, I know I had said I was going to do the review of Before They Were Hanged, so that got pushed when the House of the Dragon trailer dropped. That review kind of got pushed to this coming up week, so I'll do that. And of course, I've got to do my review of The Two Towers, which will be the Lord of the Rings book for this month. So really, all I've got planned right now is just those two reviews. I know people are probably going to want to hear me talk about the Red Rising news from Pierce Brown at Comic-Con, and I'm going to talk about that. Now, the thing is, okay, we got the announcement of Book 6, which is, I think, May 2nd. It's going to be called Lightbringer. All of the Brent Weeks jokes aside, it's exciting, but the thing is he announced that Book 6 will not be the last book. The last book will be book number 7, which is called Red God, and has a to be determined date on it. So it's kind of a bittersweet thing. It's like really cool that we're going to be getting 7 books now instead of 6, but it's also, when we thought, okay, this is going to be the conclusion. Now, he did say later on his Instagram that, Lightbringer comes out in May and book 7, Red God, comes out soon after that. So it doesn't sound like it's something that he still has to write. He may not be done writing it, but it does sound like it's not going to be as long of a wait as it has been for book number 6. So what I want to do is kind of talk about what that means for the channel, because I had always talked about doing a retrospective review series leading up to that, where we're going to reread each book and I'm going to review each book leading up to the release of Lightbringer. That's still going to happen. So I'm going to kind of talk about the plans for that, and just whatever else I can talk about with Red Rising. So that'll probably be a shorter video, but I want to talk about that because I want to give it special attention it deserves, because Red Rising is the one thing that I preach on this channel that still I don't feel like enough people will give a chance. So any extra time I can give to Red Rising, I want to do that. So I'm going to kind of do that in a special review, or not really a review, but like a discussion or something sometime this week. So that's really all I got planned. Might be kind of a light week as we try to transition back into things here. But yeah, those 2 reviews will definitely be coming this week. Before I go, I do got to talk about all that Comic-Con stuff and TV and movie talk. First, we got to talk about that new Rings of Power trailer. Now, I talked last week at depth about what I felt about Rings of Power, so I'm not really going to regurgitate that. What I'm going to say is that this was a very good trailer. It really, really was. I still have all the same concerns and all that stuff. If this was the trailer that they had dropped originally, I think they would have never gotten nearly as much pushback as they had. It's one of those things, guys, where I kind of said this when I was talking with Ed and Will yesterday, is that what I want to do with this, what I'm going to try to do with this, is I want to see if I can do like I did with Witcher Season 2, where I said, okay, they're not following the books that much anymore. Let me just turn my brain off and enjoy this as just a TV series. Enjoy this as just a non-canon, not Tolkien kind of thing, where they're kind of playing in a sandbox, but it's not canon. It's fine. It's just kind of almost like a what-if kind of episode, a one-off, an Elseworld kind of a story. And maybe I can try to enjoy it that way. So I'm going to give it every chance, guys. Like I said, I don't know. I might be too close to it. Kind of how I said about that Preacher adaptation on AMC. It was a fine show, but I'm too close to the source material. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm definitely going to try. And the trailer was very good. It really, really was. But again, anyone can make a really, really good trailer, I think. But it's not about that it looks pretty. It's not about that the special effects look good. Any of that stuff. Because again, $500 million for one season, it better look good. It better sound good. But it remains to be seen how the dialogue and the writing turns out. But I am going to be fair with it. Again, guys, I want all these fantasy shows to do well. I really, really do. But I do think, again, this is where Amazon's got to try to catch up with the HBOs and the Netflixes of the world when it comes to their streaming service, is they've got to get better at marketing. This is just like Wheel of Time. They didn't put out the best trailer until like 2 weeks before the show comes out. And a lot of people think, oh, that's the best time to... No, it is not. You plant that seed early and you have people excited. You have them counting down to it. You don't do it 14 days before the show premieres. That's just how I feel about it. Now, I get in this case, I get they wanted to do it at Comic-Con. It made a lot of sense. But, but they just put out a trailer like a week ago that wasn't nearly as good as this one. So, I still have a lot of the same gripes, guys, and those will come up. I'm not going to hide those. But it was a very good trailer, so I'll give them credit for that. Wheel of Time got renewed early, guys. Did you hear this? Season 3. I am rather surprised. I really, really am. I thought they would wait and see the response in viewership, how many people come back for Season 2. I thought they would wait for that. I know that they'd already shot Season 2 or some of Season 2 before they could get some of the feedback on Season 1. So that didn't really surprise me. In fact, a lot of people thought, oh, when it gets renewed for Season 2, that means they just love it. Not the case, guys. When a production spends this much money, startup on something, it actually loses them money to cancel after 1 year. So it actually made more sense. I always said that Season 3, that's when you decide if you've got a show or not. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. Rafe Judkins did say it's going to be adapting The Shadow Rising, which is book number 4. So I do expect to see parts of book 2, 3, and 4 in season number 2, because book 4 is a big old boy. So I don't know. I don't know. Again, I hope they are able to right the ship. I really, really do. I thought it had a lot of potential, and they just kept making mistakes. Let's just put it that way. You guys know how we feel about it at this point. We tried to stay optimistic about it. In fact, we took a lot of heat, Madison and I did, for being optimistic about it at first. And even by the end, it beat us down. We could not do it. I like to be optimistic on this channel, guys. And there we go. Before I go, I will just mention that Dungeons & Dragons trailer is called Honor Among Thieves, that new Dungeons & Dragons movie. I did hear a lot of people upset because it is not a serious fantasy movie. I'm kind of on the fence. Every time they tried to make a Dungeons & Dragons movie serious, it's just been campy and it's been terrible. It's just been bad, you know? So I kind of get what they're going for here. I felt like if they had tried to do another serious Dungeons & Dragons movie, like the best that it could do was like that World of Warcraft movie, which wasn't terrible, but 5 minutes after you finish it, you forgot about it. So I kind of get what they're doing here. It's very clear that they wanted to make this a Marvel movie. It looks like if Marvel Studios did a fantasy movie. That's what it looks like to me. But for me, it kind of almost looks like they had this group play an actual D&D campaign, and they said, okay, no matter what happens in it, let's make a movie out of it. That's kind of what it feels like to me. So I think it looks like fun. I don't think it's anything I'd pay to see, but when it hits streaming, yeah, sure, I'll watch it. Probably watch it with my kids. Have a good time with it. And Chris Pine is always at least, worth a watch for me. I think he's a very underrated actor. He's a very fun actor, and I think he's going to do a good job in this. And I don't know. I think this really just comes down to what you expect. If you want just a fun popcorn flick, good time fantasy movie, I think you could probably enjoy it. But, if you really want, fantasy to be taken seriously, I can see why this is, not your bag. But maybe I was just swayed because the trailer had Led Zeppelin in it. So that might be it. I won't deny these things. But, guys, that's all I have for this week. A little longer since, more things did happen since the last time that we talked. But I do want to make sure that I got a lot of this stuff out there about why I made some of the reading decisions that I have. And understand, guys, I'm human and I'm a mess too. These things will happen. But, we got to do what the heart wants sometimes, and apparently my heart wanted to go back to Westeros. So guys, what are you up to this week? What are you reading? What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you playing? What did you like about Comic-Con? Any of these things, drop in the comments and let me know, and have yourselves an awesome week.